Hello. Welcome to the Goods. I know that you have been looking at us wearing our Fly Goods podcast gear and wondering where can we get those. Well, guess what? We have the answers for you. We have it here, Teespring. Go to Teespring and you will find all of this glorious merchandising, from t-shirts to mugs to, well, there's other toys, but we can't talk about that now. Go to Teespring, enjoy our memorabilia. And I'm back, all flash and no substance, on a solo tip again, because Terrence over here does not want to do this one with me.
Because we don't understand it.
And that's all right. We're in October, and I've been thinking a lot about, how we got to where we're at when it comes to horror, and what pretty much shaped horror to what we know today. So my top 5 for today is the top 5 horror influences, or top 5 influences that impacted horror. How's that, Terrence? Is that better?
To you.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to start my number 5. My number 5 is Elvira. Elvira is, she is pretty much the embodiment of empowerment in a lot of ways. Women empowerment. Okay. Because she is the first woman to, one, make horror sexy, and second, to show a side of a woman, especially when it comes to a genre like horror, that can not just be sexy, but be funny as well. And to actually show a genuine love for the genre. And to, take it upon herself to be on a show, to host shows, to acknowledge all of the B movies that got no recognition. And a lot of these movies became cult classics strictly because of her. So I think that her and the way she celebrates horror on a daily basis makes her one of the biggest influences in horror. Okay. Number 4!
Number 4!
My number 4 is one of my childhood heroes. My number 4 is Tom Savini. Tom Savini is a veteran. He was in Vietnam, and he saw some of the most grisliest things that anybody would ever want to see as a photographer in Vietnam. And because of his memory and because of his attention to detail in what he saw over there, it made him that much better as a makeup artist. And when you look at what he's done, Friday the 13th, The Prowler, Maniac, working with George Romero on the Dead films, everything that he's done, even to this day, he's making masks for Bray Wyatt to this day. So everything that he has done with makeup and horror, using practical effects and really getting the detail right when it comes to the wounds because of what he's seen. He has influenced so many people in horror, Greg Nicotero and others. And if you guys have not seen Screen Greats Volume 1, check it out. His new documentary, Smoke and Mirrors, will be coming out soon. Check it out. He is, for me, one of the biggest influences in horror. Okay. And I forgot to mention Creepshow. Creepshow is another one. All right, number 3.
Number 3!
Number 3 is Stephen King. Come on. Carrie, Cujo, Pet Sematary, Children of the Corn, The Dead Zone. I mean, how do you not?
I will give you that he was kind of the leader of horror films in the 80s. Because he came out with so many miniseries and television, straight television stuff that were like me as a child. Before I was able to kind of sneak out and watch rated R films, all my horror was coming from television, so Stephen King was a big influence for me in horror.
Exactly, but when you think about those films that I just mentioned, and the fact that they just remade It, Chapter 1, 2, and it made hundreds of millions of dollars based on his writing. I mean, how do you not have him in the Mount Rushmore of horror? So he is one of the biggest influences because of his writings. And when you factor in the stuff that he wrote that did not have anything to do with horror, like Stand By Me, like The Shawshank Redemption, he is absolutely phenomenal. So I'm going to put him definitely in there. Number 3, Stephen King. Number two. Number two is John Carpenter. John Carpenter.
Why though?
The reason why I got John Carpenter so high, which technically you could even switch off Carpenter and Stephen King, but the reason I put John Carpenter so high is because John Carpenter's work in '78 on Halloween made the '80s horror. I mean, a majority of the '80s horror is based off knocking off John Carpenter's Halloween, Friday the 13th, The Burning, Prom Night.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
No, Terror Train, and all of these, Sorority House Massacre, Slumber Party Massacre, Sleepaway Camp. So many slashers in the 80s, and all of it stemmed from copying John Carpenter's Halloween. And then he didn't even stop at the slasher genre. He went on to create The Thing, which a lot of people say that it is a top 5 horror film of all time. So when you have The Thing, Prince of Darkness and The Mouth of Madness, and so many of these movies, to this day, Halloween Kills is the #1 movie in America. So his influence on horror and the slasher genre that pretty much shaped the 80s and pretty much gave us all, something that we saw, and all these memories that we saw when these horror films were our babysitters, because that's what we saw on Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah. Bad parenting.
But a great time. That was all Carpenter, in my opinion. So yes, so number 2 is definitely John Carpenter.
That should have been number 3.
Yeah, it's all right. Number 1.
Number 1.
Number 1 of the Universal monsters.
Okay.
Here is why.
I mean, I can see it.
Without, when you're looking at characters that pretty much are the staple of every franchise, Indiana Jones, Darth Vader, so many, that are out there, the Terminator, so many out there. It all started with the Universal monsters.
I mean, yeah, they had like 5 decades of film.
Exactly. And, they're the first ones to actually celebrate horror characters in the same manner that you would celebrate, at that time, Humphrey Bogart going to see Casablanca and then going to see The African Queen because it's Bogey, right? Or James Cagney, Angels with Dirty Faces, and all these movies that, that you went to see Cagney. Well, you went to see Dracula, you went to see The Creature in the Black Lagoon and Wolfman and Frankenstein, and you got to really know people like Bela Lugosi, Boris Karloff, Lon Chaney, and all of these guys that really contributed to this, to where you were able to make these characters the stars. And it's a reflection of the way things are today. Freddy Krueger is a star. You don't see Elm Street for Nancy. I mean, I'm sorry. I love Heather Langenkamp, but it's the truth. You don't see the Halloween franchise for Laurie Strode or Donald Pleasance. You see it for The Shape. And all these horror icons that we got, and people, they try so hard to replicate it and try to make new horror icons, and it doesn't work. So even though I did like Shocker, and I thought Horace Pinker was underrated, to be honest with you.
Shocker 2 coming soon.
Shocker 2 coming soon. But it all started with the Universal monsters, and when they did, make an impact the way they did in the 50s and 60s, and for them to create so much, a franchise out of all this, it's just one of the biggest influences, straight up. When you really think about it, there is no, we have the Mount Rushmore of 80s horror right now, which is basically Michael Myers, Freddy, Jason, and Leatherface. You don't have those guys without Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Creature of the Black Lagoon.
Give them enough credit because they precede actual television. They did stories about them on the radio. Absolutely. So that's why I honestly think that those Universal monsters, those originals, those Lugosi's and Lon Chaney's and Boris Karloff's, those are the real, true #1 influences in all of horror. Obviously, everybody's going to disagree, and that's fine. Leave it in the comment below. Let us know what your top 5 horror influences are down in the comments below. All right, honorable mentions. Robert Englund. For being a stand-up comedian?
For being a stand-up comic. I think Robert Englund, because of his personality, and what he gave Freddy Krueger was a personality, and that was something that you never got before '84. You never got that, and people try to replicate that. I don't know if you remember this one. Do you remember the horror show the horror show.
With Robert Englund?
No, the horror show with Brian James, the Max Jinky. Do you remember that one?
I kind of remember the horror show, but I don't think I actually really watched it.
Okay, I did see it, and it was like that. It was like they were, like all these people were really trying to be Freddy Krueger. Like even Horace Pinkert, I just mentioned him. You know, even that, and then he was written by Wes Craven too. But even he was trying. You know, there were so many people that were trying to bring personality to the killer, and it all started with Robert Englund. So I would say Robert Englund for sure.
Be the Warner Brothers
Rick Baker. Rick Baker is one of the first makeup artists ever win an Oscar for American Werewolf in London, and he also won another Oscar for Nutty Professor. But what he did for American Werewolf in London was absolutely amazing. One of the best werewolf transformation scenes ever, better than The Howling. Terrence.
Don't believe it.
George Romero.
For
We don't have such a craving and love for zombie films without George Romero. It just doesn't happen.
Okay.
George Romero is the godfather of the zombie film.
Okay.
And when you have guys overseas like Lucio Fulci, who did Zombie and Zombie 2 and all these other, type of movies.
Everybody who does a zombie film is basically
Trying to be George Romero.
Yeah.
So yeah. Vincent Price.
He was I think he was our first horror host. Even though he acted in some of the movies that he was in, but it was like Vincent Price presents. And it was like he got to a point to where like he didn't need to be in the film, and it's like he just say like, "Hey, I'm on board with this film. You should watch it."
And he did so many horror films that it introduced us to other horror icons like Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, and so forth. And he is in the tops in the black community. Thriller.
Hey, that was an amazing song. It's a great feature by Vincent Price.
Clive Barker.
Hey, Clive Barker.
Nightbreed, Hellraiser, Candyman, Rawhead Rex, which nobody remembers that one, but that's all right. He did some phenomenal work, and what I loved about Clive Barker was that he took horror into a whole other direction where he actually was talking about the pleasures of the flesh and how that comes into play with horror. And yeah, biggest those Cenobites, man. So Clive Barker's another honorable mention. Obviously Tobe Hooper.
Yeah.
I mean Tobe Hooper in with Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Poltergeist. I mean you can't, he's a really big influence with that type of work. Wes Craven gave us what I love about Wes Craven was that he gave us originality. It was not your standard slasher film when you got Elm Street. It was something that you had never ever seen before. And when he came back to do New Nightmare, he hadn't lost his touch. So I would definitely say Wes Craven. Then you add Scream to it. You add Scream to the mix. I don't know what he was thinking with My Soul to Take, but whatever. Wes Craven is still an awesome guy. And I said it earlier, Jamie Lee Curtis, the final girl. She's a big horror influences. There is no Nancy without Laurie Strode. There is no Kirsty without Laurie Strode. So she was pretty much the staple when it comes to the final girl and all the tropes where they're virgins and they are very nice and smart and all this other stuff. So, yeah. Jamie Lee Curtis is definitely on that freaking list.
Let's get a perfect remake.
Okay, so I got this last one. You tell me. Sigourney Weaver. In horror because of Aliens. And Alien, that's why I put her so low. There's no Sarah Connor. Without Sigourney Weaver, Ellen Ripley.
Because it's sci-fi, but it's also horror.
Sci-fi horror. It's like Event Horizon.
I mean, but
not that bad, but
it's just one of those films where like I don't consider her a scream queen yet.
I don't either, but she's the first woman, I'm telling you, to fight back, kick ass.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. There's no Sarah Connor without Ellen Ripley.
Yeah, and I get that, but
all right. Well,
I'd rather put her in action, and I'd rather put her in horror.
All right. Well, leave your comment below and let me know what your biggest influences are of horror. It doesn't matter what it is. You say whatever you want. I've already heard. Got an earful from Aspen. I got an earful from Terrence. But tell me what you think about my list. Tell me what you think about the topic. Leave a comment below. You can hit me up on Twitter. You can hit Terrence up on Facebook. go to Teespring, get one of these shirts that I'm wearing over here. We should have had some Halloween shirts. That would have been cool. Maybe next year.
Maybe somebody bought them.
Yeah, and and if be kind, rewind. No, be kind, and throw us something in our Patreon. We could always use anything to help out the show. And that's it. So for Terrence completely ridiculing me about my list, and Aspen completely looking at me with judgment faces, I'm Manny, and we'll see you next time.
Real quick, if you're still here, because we do these end of the video little blooper things. If you're still here, look down. There's a link here for Patreon. If you guys like the show, please give us money. We'll take a penny. We'll take a nickel. We'll take a dime. We'll take $1. We have some stuff on there that we're giving away on Patreon if you do contribute, because trust me, we need help. We want to buy new equipment, and we need an editor. Somebody who doesn't have to stay up in the middle of the night. Or they don't have to stay up in the middle, but I won't have to do it. So please, down patreon.com/thegoods. It's in the link. Please do it. We appreciate it. Top flight.